The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. We are back with another morning of podcasting excellence here on the Nerdcast Empire. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us as part of our new and improved schedule. Anime Thursdays has become Anime Wednesdays. We are now on at 8:30 a.m. Eastern every Wednesday morning to bring you the latest. Of course, that is 10:30 p.m. or 22:30 JST for those who might be listening in Japan. Welcome and good evening. We're going to be talking anime news, which maybe for the last time will include some Ohayocon news, and then we're going to play more of our favorite anime themes in the second half of today's program. Joining me in studio this morning, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It's going. It's early. I've already been working for several hours, getting ready for this, as well as just literally working. Yeah, we are now right on the cusp of Ohayocon 2025. It's been a long trip for sure, but we now have a schedule that we can analyze, and you know, we'll be anxious to hear how things go for them.
It really thought there was a chance we were going to end up doing this Wednesday podcast before their Friday convention started and not have a schedule to look at, and finally the schedule dropped, and we're going to be able to talk about it this morning. A couple other news items that we'll get to. And like I said, we'll get to some anime themes in the second part of the program. Just a reminder, when we're playing anime themes, you're going to want to be here at twitch.tv/Nerdcast Empire. And we do that on the YouTube VOD and on our podcast network. You will not be able to hear those themes, but we'll give you the opportunity to be able to look them up and play them yourself. But the YouTube and the podcasts don't necessarily like licensed Japanese music, so we will have to limit those here to Twitch. And the only place you can guarantee that they get through is live. But before we get to music in the second half of the show, we are going to get to some news headlines. And it starts off with the Ohayocon schedule that's been released. I really kind of thought, you know, maybe we weren't going to spend a whole lot more time talking about Ohayocon. I would say they've jumped the shark, but I feel like they did that a couple of years ago. This is something that even exceeds Arthur Fonzarelli going over top of the shark, where they were basically had stopped, just responding to people on Facebook and basically started antagonizing people who had legitimate concerns. And could have very well been some nasty comments as well that they had to deal with, but it was just a bad look, and honestly, kind of took away any thoughts I had of wanting to go up even for a day. That being said, we are impartial journalists on the Nerdcast Empire, so when things break, we want to talk about it, and when things are good, we do want to give credit where credit's due, and there are some positives that have come out of the Ohayocon schedule. There are some negatives as well. We're going to get to both of them. But I think the number one overall positive, which was kind of shocking, is a return to the guidebook app. And even though some people complained about that, guidebook used to be the standard really for all of these conventions of this size and even bigger. And Animazement obviously still uses it, and it's excellent. And, it's probably the best software out there that you can get for scheduling for a convention. And Ohayocon abandoned it many years ago for other software, and it just wasn't as good. And
I think also Matsuri-Con's bad about that.
They are, yeah.
Because Ohayocon did use guidebook in 2024. I wasn't there, but I definitely have it on my guidebook.
Okay,
list,
gotcha.
So.
I know they had not used it for a while.
Yeah.
They've gone back to it the last couple of years. And I don't know if their con being much, much smaller has made it cheaper to use, and that's the reason why they were able to go back to it. But that is something that is a positive. I think the guidebook app is a much easier way to kind of organize your schedule, but the schedule, there's a lot less of it there to organize. No Thursday panels. The Sunday panels do go through 7 o'clock with closing, actually later than 7 because closing ceremony starts at 7. But I guess just start with your initial thoughts as you kind of glance through the schedule. You had a chance to look at it yesterday. What kind of jumped out at you?
Yeah, I think obviously being on guidebook is a positive. It's not perfect, but it seems to be the best thing out there. There are certainly worse options. I think the people that find fault in that, for whatever reason, would rather go back to the point in time where you just had a paper schedule and that's all you get. it's cool to have one of those too to look at
For
on
sure.
site. But obviously, there are so many drawbacks to that as far as you can't update it in real time. You never know if it's going to be accurate at any given moment. But
and it is a lot of wasted paper. Not that I'm the most, let's save the world, but at the same time, like, let's be real. I mean, if you've got 10,000 attendees and you're printing 15,000 paper schedules, like that's a little much. In 2025, when you have the option to have a good digital schedule.
Yeah, exactly. But going through, kind of looking at the positives, I don't know if this is a thing because there's less overall content, but it seems like video rooms are a very big part of the convention experience this year. I think it feels like they've kind of been de-emphasized over the years, but man, when you scroll through the schedule, so much of what you're seeing is the content that's being shown in a couple of the video rooms they have, which, I'll take it. I mean, whenever there's nothing else going on, it's good to have that option. And,
for sure.
They have some shows, like they're showing at one point Fruits Basket, Gege no Kitaro, Natsume's Book of Friend, Toilet Bound Hanako-kun, Alia Sometimes Hides Her Feelings in Russian, Sayuki Reload. A lot of stuff on there, stuff that I didn't even get through because there are so many. But I think that's, when there's nothing else going on, that's a great thing to have.
For sure.
I do think, and I don't think for any reason that they were listening to us, but there are certain things that we've talked about in the past that I think a convention like Animazement does well that you would like to see other conventions do, and I think that is Japanese culturally relevant panels and demonstrations. And I did see that they are holding a sumo demonstration, which is something I've not seen at a convention up to this point.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. More of that would be fantastic. It's kind of standard events that go on, karaoke, foam fighting. I think that stuff always plays well. It's relevant to anime, considering so many anime involve fighting of some variety, and obviously the music element, as we talk about it all the time. The music element's huge in anime as well, so that's certainly a positive. Panels like the Anime Music Challenge, bringing in Fatal Fanatics, I think they did a fine job in Animazement.
Yeah,
that's not a bad acquisition. And also some of the guests, I think, like I mentioned, Fatal Fanatics, the sumo demonstrators, Samurai Dan being there is a plus.
He's great.
As far as voice actor guests, I think Veronica Taylor's a pretty big get that you don't see at Ohayocon regularly. So definitely some positives to be found.
Yeah, I think whether they listened to us or listened to some people that clearly had some good ideas. Clearly, you've had some good ideas to bring in. You're taking some good things from other conventions and bringing them in. It could be the new con guy, the new chairman that has been involved in other conventions, brought these from other conventions he's worked on. So, kudos to him for that. It doesn't completely erase, not even close, the negatives that have surrounded the convention over the year. And, it's certainly a good first step into putting on a good convention, which is what they really should have been focused on all along. They shouldn't have been worried about engaging people on Facebook.
No.
They should have just been worried about making the best convention you can make and just moving forward. And that's still a huge mistake they've made that probably turned a lot of people who weren't necessarily against them. They were people that were kind of on the fence.
I think that, and just kind of your standard normie type fans, they see something that appears to be negative in comments, and it's like, maybe I'm better off staying away from this.
Yeah, for sure. And there are some negatives in the schedule. Just, again, the panel selection overall probably isn't great, which, again, part of that is it is considerably smaller now than it was, so you have considerably less content and potentially less people there because of it. You're missing the big fan panels that have been a staple of Ohayocon. Those are probably never coming back to Ohayocon.
I would guess not.
And barring just some crazy turnaround of the people being involved running the convention and them reaching out and trying to mend those fences. But, it's, like I said, it's almost as frustrating as it is encouraging that you see these positive things, because it's like, you guys could have done this right all along and at least had a generally positive feeling going into this convention. Some people were going to be negative no matter what. You're never wanting those people back. But you could have at least made it so that everybody else felt pretty good about continuing to support the brand that is Ohayocon, and it just feels like they've screwed up in so many ways in doing that.
It's like anything else. It's easy to look at the really vocal negative people and say, hey, we don't want those people back. But you realize for every one of those, there are dozens of people who felt a certain way but never felt the need to post publicly about it.
Yeah.
Like I've never contributed to any of the Facebook groups because why?
Yeah.
I could give you just objective thoughts, but I have no guarantee that those won't be taken as hostile either. So
yeah,
it just seems like it's not really worth engaging when I don't know how it's going to be. The last thing I want is some weird allegation that I hate certain people because I said, hey, the convention doesn't look as good this year.
Yeah. Or, hey, where are these things that you promised? Like Mike Senator Nicholas, even on their
He's
guest
on the guidebook app, and they have not officially announced him outside of that video call, which now just seems
almost like a fever dream.
Yeah.
Like that whole thing, like all this promised, transparency that really never happened. And, it'd be weird to announce him now because, one, you can't play it off, at least for the people who were there in the call, as, oh, this is a last minute get, because it wasn't.
Yeah.
Like, we knew he was someone you had locked down at least supposedly months ago. That's just weird because obviously he's one of the biggest guys you can get at a convention to draw people in. Why would you announce him at the last minute?
It's a curious thing because what convention were we at where he did fill in as a last minute replacement guest?
Was it Matsuri-Con?
It might have been Matsuri-Con.
Yeah.
But it's like, is that a thing? Like, are they going to do that same kind of thing here? Like, oh, last minute, we were able to get him. Like, is that a gimmick? I don't know.
The other thing I wonder with him, and to maybe give Ohayocon a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, is because he's clearly very busy with the G-Kid stuff, and I don't know if it's a situation where he just like gets with a con and says, okay, look, tentatively I have this weekend open, but when we get to a month out or 2 weeks out, that might change just because that's what my work schedule looks like. So if I can be there, I'll be there, but you can't announce me early because I don't want to get people's hopes up and then have to bail. I mean, of all the people in the industry, it would make sense if he was under that kind of working arrangement. But if that's the case, don't mention him in a Zoom call. Don't tell people that, or put him on your guidebook app.
Yeah, that one's a weird one. Like, I kind of get, they mentioned him on that call, and then that call, I don't know if that part of the call actually was salvaged and uploaded. I'm guessing probably not, but that's one thing. But to then put him on the app, that just seems really odd to me.
A couple other just small negatives before we move on. Looking at the maps and stuff, it looks like there is at least a few things that are at the Con Hotel, which, again, as we noted, is not attached to the convention center. It is at the Marriott University of Dayton. I mean, there's generally nothing wrong with having events at the Con Hotel. The Hyatt always hosted panels, but when the hotel is not attached, that is a problem because it means if you're not staying at the Con Hotel, you're going to have to make a point to drive between the convention center and the Con Hotel if you want to go to certain things. And that is not a good plan, especially if you have people that don't drive.
The other concerning thing, and now that you mentioned that the video rooms are at the hotel, and this makes a lot of sense because they seem to be running perpetually. So once the events at the convention center are done, what are the video rooms going to look like? There's not going to be anything else really to do.
Yeah. Well, and without getting too deep into it, running into Twitch TOS, like there are reasons why a lot of these video rooms have disappeared because people would go in there late at night when there wasn't anything going on and do things that shouldn't be done in a public space. And so rather than have to have somebody like hose these people down in the middle of the night, they just, we're not going to do this anymore. It's not worth it. Just stream it on your phone.
It almost seems like something where the hotel would want to moderate who's going into those rooms, even though it's technically part of the convention. Just like, at the Hyatt, when they would keep people without rooms from the elevators, I think you don't want these video rooms getting overflowed with non-residents or non-hotel stayers, I guess.
Yeah, or that's just it. Or people that aren't even badged for the convention. Because, I mean, what would stop, hey, come on over, we'll watch this anime. Like, you don't have to buy a badge, badge is kind of pricey. So
yeah, I think kind of going back to my list of the bad stuff, there are other things too. I think kind of to your point about the signature panel groups. I mean, it's hard to replace something like an Anime Hell or all the panels that Kick Punch Co-op provided.
For sure.
I think they are so much of what just someone who enjoys anime and gaming, just that they're there to have a good time celebrating those things. That they're so instrumental in what have been really good Ohayocon weekends in the past, and they're going to be missed.
Yeah,
for sure. I also think, and this, I assume this is still a popular event. I think their signature event, the roast, is kind of played out.
It is, for sure. I think it's just an excuse for a lot of those people to get drunk and just rip on their friends.
And act self-important.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. And I think there were a handful of people that the roast made sense for, and they did a really good job with it the first few years, and then it just felt kind of sad and dated.
There was a time for it, and I think the way that that talent interacted with each other in that moment in time made for a fun event. But things have turned kind of negative over the years, and I couldn't imagine wanting to be a part of something like that, knowing that at any point in time, those same kind of comments and antics could potentially be used to kind of force you out of the industry.
Sure. So, yeah.
I also think it's cool that they've added some of these guests and brought in guests that I think are a little more fresh, but I still think they need to kind of remove themselves of some of these repeat guests that don't really provide anything anime or gaming relevant to the convention.
Yeah, for sure.
And the other kind of big one is, I think you have this kind of niche fandom gathering like an anime convention or any other convention. There's the thing about that is you have this one giant unifying thing. We're all fans of anime. We're all fans of video games. I don't understand why we have so many panels that then try to subdivide the fandoms into different little groups. Like, I don't host a panel that's 40-year-old tennis coaches. Like, there's no need for that. We're there to celebrate anime, not whatever makes you different than all the other anime fans. I think that isn't a positive for your average anime fan.
Yeah, I mean, it is certainly kind of a strange choice for sure. And, I think we've talked a little bit about the fact that they're not at the same venue, which is obviously the biggest negative really of the whole weekend and this whole shuttle service and how's that going to work out.
Yeah.
I will say that Ohayocon did luck out with the weather in this area. Shockingly, the temperatures on Friday are supposed to be closing in on 60 degrees. It is supposed to rain. Man,
I'll take as much rain as you want to give me at 60 degrees right now.
I'm so tired of looking at snow. There's so much of it around here. But and then even over the weekend, temperatures in the 40s, which for the end of January is perfectly fine. Yeah. Like, you would take that any time for Ohayocon. So they really dodged the bullet because, just a couple weeks ago, we were down in the single digits for highs, and that absolutely could have been the weather that we would have gotten this weekend.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if the average high temperature for the month breaks 20 degrees, even with this last-minute warm-up.
Yeah, for sure. It's been really brutal weather-wise in this area, but, yeah, no snow, a little bit of rain, warmer temperatures. It's been as good as they could have hoped for. It's going to be really interesting to see what comes out of this and what the reviews look like. I'm hoping we can get some of those, and maybe we'll talk about them next Wednesday if we can put enough together and kind of monitor what social media looks like over the weekend and get an idea of how the experience goes for people and whether Ohiocon's going to make it through this. They have done a pretty decent job of putting together a schedule compared to what I kind of expected.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Maybe there's hope for the con. I don't know, but Ohayocon is this weekend, Dayton at the Dayton Convention Center, and we'll certainly kind of keep an eye on what comes out of that, and if there's any nonsense, or no nonsense, we'll report that as well coming up next Wednesday on our anime podcast. A couple smaller stories we wanted to get to, and this first one's just kind of it's a footnote, but it's also something to keep an eye on as far as the industry goes. I was on X last week, I think it was, and there was a solicitation from one of the X accounts that posts when new DVD and Blu-rays get solicited, they usually post like temporary cover art. Sometimes it's not the finalized cover art, and when the release date is, and the account's at WTK that does that, and they posted Urusei Yatsura Season 3 and 4 of the new Urusei Yatsura coming out on Blu-ray on April the 29th. And a guy by the name of George Horvath, who at one time wrote for Anime News Network, doesn't anymore. I don't know what outlet he's with, but noted that that it looks like the dub is not going to be included with this. In fact, it appears that there was no dub produced for these seasons. And he has a post on X that basically says that it looks like the dub wasn't considered financially successful enough to warrant dubbing the rest. However, not supporting this release won't suddenly make Sentai decide to change course. It'll only support their decision and prove them right. This is another one of those things that we'll have to keep an eye on in the industry, because I went back and looked, and there was a lot of discussion in 2024 kind of asking, like, where are the dubbed episodes for these? Like, where are they? And clearly the answer is nowhere. And it does make you wonder what the future of some of these dub shows are. Because we're not talking about some fifth-rate isekai show that's, a throwaway 13 episodes and you'll never hear from it again. We're talking Urusei Yatsura. I mean, we're talking about one of the big remake properties of the last few years. By all accounts, people have received it very well. People really liked it, thought it was a good remake. And the dub of it, for whatever reason, didn't drive enough sales, or at least the sales of the first couple of volumes, not enough to really justify dubbing more of it. And we do give Sentai a break most of the time, because it does feel like, for the most part, they try to do right by anime fans. But at the same time, they are a business, and they've got to be concerned with the bottom line. And it's a little concerning that you have a show that's of this kind of nature that maybe they decide a dub is not necessary. And Mike, I'm curious to see if this isn't something we start seeing more of as we go into 2025.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I do think with Sentai Filmworks, I tend to give them the benefit of the doubt, because I do kind of treat them as like the underdog that I want to see do well. So anytime they release something with a dub, I kind of look at it as a luxury and not so much an expectation.
Yeah.
Kind of odd to end it kind of halfway through the run of the show. But I think that must tell you that the numbers that they were expecting to see from this, they just aren't getting. And I question, like, it's a big show amongst anime fans, but I don't think it's the kind of show that just your random person who watched Attack on Titan is going to jump to. I don't think the original ever had that level of exposure over here. I'm sure the reboot is good, but I think it's going to attract kind of an older demographic of fan who probably are maybe more likely to watch the subtitled version anyway. So I think maybe that this probably could have been their plan from the beginning, and it would have worked out to just not dub it to begin with. I also think, in looking at that X post, it's like, I'm just happy to see a physical release.
Absolutely.
If I have to sacrifice dubs for more physical releases, I will do that every time.
Yeah, and I think, I give them some credit for maybe dubbing the first two seasons as an experiment. Like, okay, we don't know if this dub's going to really take off, but we owe it to you all to try to give you an English adaptation of this, pending, does it do well? And if it doesn't, we've always got the subtitle version we can churn out, and then you get a physical release. And yeah, absolutely. The fact that they are at least releasing it physically in the States, that's great, because it's going to be reasonably priced and it's going to be something you can pick up. But I think you're on the mark there. I think it is more of a niche show, and I think this may not be the last time we see this, especially with longer running shows where it's like, well, okay, we'll dub a little bit of it and see whether people watch it, and if they don't, then we'll just release a subtitle, and at least you have it in some form or fashion.
There are plenty of shows that other studios own that have dubs that don't have physical releases.
Yeah.
And I would much prefer to see a physical copy of something I can actually own, so I'm not under the impression that I have to subscribe to these services till the end of time.
Well, and there's a third category. There are the dubs that are released that are clearly subpar, because you're just trying to put a dub on it to get it out the door. I mean, we've talked a little bit about the Kenshin dub, although generally it's fine. Like, clearly, it's
a weird one because I don't necessarily think. I mean, for the most part, I don't think the acting is bad.
Yeah,
I just question
the choices of
the
actors,
the casting, and as far as what you were trying to get out of that character.
And on top of the fact that a lot of the voice actors that were in the original are still active in the industry, and you could have gotten at least some of those people back, and that was a decision. We're not going to get too far down this road because I feel like we're getting too far off topic, but Funimation had done well for a while to like, hey, we're redubbing this old show, or we've got a new season of this old show. Let's try to get as many of the original actors back as possible. And this felt like a pivot in the other direction.
To where you were kind of excited, like, hey, this is this actor's first time working for Funimation. Oh, crazy. Like, they were never a Funimation person, but they brought them in. Like,
yeah. I mean, especially if it was Ocean Group people.
Yeah.
They were like, hey, we're bringing in, one of the guys in the original Dragon Ball dub, to do this thing, So, yeah, it's... Again, I am generally inclined to give Sentai the benefit of the doubt, and they are releasing it physically. And, the best advice I can give people is, like he said in the post, like, buy it. Like, if you are upset that there's not a dub on it, buy the subtitle version, because I guarantee you if enough people buy it, Sentai will look at it and say, okay, we need to dub it, and we'll do some sort of exchange program where you can exchange your subtitle disc for dub discs.
You almost have to look at everything now as a Kickstarter.
Yes.
And think that your purchase is potentially funding some stretch goal down the way where if this Blu-ray generates X amount of dollars, they're like, hey, now it's feasible to put an English track on it.
I mean, the show I've talked about many times that absolutely was that way was Toradora.
Yeah.
Like, I bought the crazy collector's edition because I loved that show so much, and it was sub-only. And evidently that collector's edition did so much in the way of sales because people loved that show. They're like, hey, we're going to go back and dub it. And we're actually going to like get the best possible dub cast we can get and create this masterpiece of a dub on that show.
That ranks up there as far as best dubs I've ever watched.
Yeah, for sure. And I've seen the whole thing subtitled, obviously, because that's the only way I could watch it before. The subtitle version is amazing as well, but it's one of those shows where you can put the English right alongside the Japanese, and it's, just impeccable. But again, buy. If something's out there, a show you love, and there's a physical release, buy it, support it, because, we talk about that on the music podcast all the time. It allows these companies to continue to do what they're doing, and, anime's still niche. It's as niche as some of the bands we talk about on Sunday nights, so just make sure you support it when you can.
Exactly.
One last news story, not exactly the brightest news story to end with, but probably an important news story, and it's the news that Fuji TV has a new CEO, or new president, I should say, after the resignation of their previous president. Koichi Minato has stepped down. Has been replaced by Kenji Shimizu, which some anime fans may know as a producer on shows like Dragon Ball Z, Yu Yu Hakusho, Osamatsu-kun, Gegege no Kitaro, Dr. Slump, and many more. And obviously the Fuji TV story is pretty dark. It's kind of another spinoff of this whole Johnny's and Associates, the kind of sexual assault scandals that have been going on there. And there was a TV host, Masahiro Nakai, who evidently was involved in some sort of assault, and then the Fuji TV president found out about it and let him stay on the air for another 18 months afterwards. So they reached a settlement on the assault, and now obviously the president is stepping down. Obviously very dark circumstances around the resignation, but I kind of want to focus more on Shimizu taking over, because I know he's a name that a lot of anime fans who are familiar with Japan will know, and I would think somebody who's been involved with these mega shows being the Fuji TV president is, I would think a good thing for the company in the long term, especially if you're an anime fan.
Yeah, unfortunately, my mind goes to, okay, you have this industry guy who's now running the show. It feels kind of like Hiroshi Tanahashi being the president of New Japan Pro Wrestling, and how's that gone? But yeah, the story's kind of wild. I also saw that the CEO of their parent company, Fuji Media Holdings, Shuji Kano, also resigned. So it was a big deal, clearly. And when you're paying out a settlement of 90 million yen, like that's probably going to get people's attention to some degree.
Yeah.
I just, it's good to see that kind of story and that kind of scandal still plays out that way in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
I think you don't see that as much over here. Like, you might see it when it comes to people who aren't kind of on the top of the totem pole, but once you've reached a certain pinnacle, you can kind of get away with anything.
For sure.
And I feel like in Japan, it's not that way. It's almost worse if you're higher up on the totem pole and you're responsible for these horrible things.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with the Johnny's and Associates, that is definitely worth reading into, because that was a long-running scandal that is finally the cleanup from that continues even to this day. And there have been a lot of things associated with Johnny's where they've taken the name off, like the band Johnny's West is now just West because they got rid of that name. Well, SMAP is another group that was associated with Johnny's, and Masahiro Nakai was a member of that group. So yeah, it's an ugly scandal. It's probably going to continue to unwind over the next few years, but it does feel like there is an effort being made to clean this up, and it may take a while, but I give them credit for going after it seriously and trying to clean up their entertainment industry, because it was an absolute mess for a lot of years, and people shouldn't have to worry about that stuff if you're working in the entertainment field or anywhere. But I am definitely curious to see like where Fuji TV goes. Like, do we see an increased focus on anime? Do we see, is there something that comes out of Shimizu taking over? It'll be really fascinating. But kudos to them for trying to clean house and trying to kind of switch things up after really a dark period in their history. Just a reminder, we've kind of gone through a schedule change, so I wanted to even put in a bullet point to note. We'll talk about the upcoming schedule here. You see on the screen when our regularly scheduled podcasts are now. News podcasts on Monday and Fridays at 9 a.m. We'll be back on Friday morning at 9 a.m. for the Nerdcast News Report. We did our first one on Monday. We'll do another one on Friday where we'll give you about a 20-minute update on your news as you go into the weekend. Again, 9 a.m. Animes will be moving to Wednesdays. That's where we are right now, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Music Weekly will stay on Sundays at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. And the plan is for Saturday to do a live watch-along of the Royal Rumble. That'll be at 6 o'clock Eastern Time. We'll probably start a little bit before then to kind of do a little preview of it, and then we'll get started. So a lot of content coming your way on the Nerdcast Empire, so make sure you check us out. And if you haven't dropped us a follow on Twitch, be sure to do that, because we've got lots of cool stuff coming in 2025. But we're going to be talking music now, and it's something we do a lot of on the Nerdcast Empire. And once again today, it is time to talk anime music. And basically, there's not necessarily any rhyme or reason to any of this. We're just basically giving you some of the anime themes that we have enjoyed or discover over the course of the podcast, and it's just a chance for us to spotlight some of these themes that are just fun for us. And again, a reminder, if you're on YouTube, if you're on the podcast network, you're not going to hear the songs. We will leave the descriptions of us talking about them in, like I do with the music podcast. But the best bet, anytime we're doing music, whether it's Music Weekly, whether it's this podcast, we do it about once a month or once every 6 weeks. You want to be here live, because that's the one place you're guaranteed to get to hear the music. But way we do this is Mike will go through his first 3 picks. I'll go through my first 3 picks. Then Mike will do 2 and 1. I'll do 2 and 1. And then we'll call it a day here on the Nerdcast Empire. So, Mike, we'll get to you first. Let's go and give us your first anime music pick for the day.
Yeah, so, I've really tried to steer my choices down to things that I've watched or am currently watching, just because I tend to, or what I found through doing kind of my anime opening list is that, man, I tend to have more of a connection with opening and ending themes from shows I've watched. Mm-hmm. Like, there's just a little more there for me to grab onto.
Sure.
That being said, and this one kind of fits in with Ohayocon coming up, because I feel like this show definitely kind of takes me back to like the early days of my fandom, and just kind of realizing like how deep that can run, and maybe I'm not the craziest, most insane otaku in the world. I'm fairly normal by comparison. So my number 5 pick is the opening theme to the anime Genshin. It is My Pace Dio by Monzo.
Yeah, it was a great show, and one that I would be curious if I went back and watched it again, kind of how some of that holds up all these years later. But yeah, it was definitely a stark look into the world of otaku in Japan. It definitely put your fandom in perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. This song was released on October 27th, 2004. From what I could gather, it was the fourth single from Monzo. The band had been active since 1994. I just think in general it fits the show perfectly. And again, you start realizing, man, there are people that are really into this stuff way more than I could ever possibly be. And I think there are some elements of the show in 2025 that you may look at as being maybe more cringy, but are also probably less insane than what's actually out there in the real world.
For sure. I think everybody needs to check this show out if you can find it somewhere streaming or on physical release. But yeah, it's certainly a classic one from that era. It is a little weird to see a character smoking in an anime. Like, it's so funny how smoking has become so rare publicly that jumps out at you when you're watching the opening theme. And even though, like, you do see it in anime still, it feels kind of weird and out of place when you're talking about college kids in an anime club. But
and it's weird thinking now that, like, obviously you have the open there showing it, and then a couple of the shows I'm watching now, like, have featured characters smoking, some more prominently than others. But yeah, that's still kind of a fairly common thing in anime, probably, but you certainly don't see it in Western entertainment.
Not at all. But yeah, that's opening theme to Genshin. Definitely a classic show. Definitely people need to check that out. And had great music as well. So let's get to your number 4 or number 2 pick, however which direction you want to look at it. Your next pick.
Yeah, so kind of number 4 on my weekly 5, I guess, if you want to look at it as a ranking. This is one that I'd seen the open a while back, and it's just so catchy that it actually made me start watching the show. And I'm on episode 3, and I don't know how I feel about the show yet. It's probably not going to be one of those all-time classics because it's so out there. But I can't deny the opening and the ending are both just ridiculously good. That being said, my next pick is the opening theme to the anime Sister Princess. The song is Love Destiny by Yui Horie.
Yeah, she's great. And this is a stretch where she was really releasing a lot of hit songs for anime. So not surprising to see this one charted well. And she's still making anime music all these years later and still going as strong as ever. So it's fantastic to see. And this is, you're right, this is a very catchy song.
Yeah, absolutely. It's her third single. It was the first under King Records. It was released on May 16th, 2001. I'm hoping this show will leave me with a better impression than the show that her first 2 singles came from, which was Kurogane Communication.
True.
Those were great songs too, but man, that show was just bleak. And I'm watching Rainbow right now, which is like fairly bleak too, but even it, you feel, has a bit more sunshine in it than that show did. This song reached number 11 on the Oricon weekly charts. It charted for 5 weeks, selling 43,480 copies. Yeah, when you watch the open and you hear the song, you just think this show probably isn't for me in any way, shape, or form. But it's so catchy, I can't not watch.
Just feels like there were a lot of shows in that time frame. Shows like Happy Lesson, where you had male lead character and just a bunch of stereotypical girls surrounding lead character. It definitely has that look of a show that was released in the late 90s, early 2000s with the girls with the giant eyes that are way too far apart.
Yeah, very ill-proportioned.
It definitely has that look of like Air and Canon type. You know, Air is notoriously bad for some of the animation in that where it's almost comical. But again, catchy song. I'm curious to hear your thoughts when you get through this show because, like I said, it's not one that's really on my list.
I don't know if it's meant to be kind of a parody of those kind of shows because it's so bizarre. The main character bombs like his high school entrance exam, but ends up weirdly getting accepted to this other school that he gets like forcibly taken to that's on this island. And there are just all these girls that call him Big Brother. And there's this one dude who seems to do everything on the island. Like he handles like the dock work. He's also like the realtor. He's like every character that they run into, I think he's their teacher too. It's the same guy. So like, No one's really given the main character an explanation as to what is going on. So like, I don't know what to make of it.
Yeah, definitely curious to see what ends up coming out of that at the end. But yeah, so that's Love Destiny from Yui Horie. Really good stuff there. One more pick before we jump to some of mine. What do you got for number 3?
Yeah, so for number 3, we are looking at the opening theme to the second part of the Horimiya anime, Horimiya Piece. The song is Shiawase by Omoi no Take.
Horimiya's got great music, so not surprising to see one of those theme songs showing up on your list.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. I feel like both of the opening themes and the music in general feels more serious than the show ever is. I kind of went into it thinking I was going to get kind of that long, drawn-out love triangle kind of thing, but no, Horimiya pretty much resolves that fairly early, and then the rest of the show, and certainly all of Peace, which is like just kind of added snippets from within the show itself, is really just about how ridiculous the characters are, which maybe left some people thinking there's not a whole lot of substance here, but I thought it was really good. Like the characters are insane, and the second part specifically is just so hilarious at times. The song itself was the first single from Omoi no Take, released on September 6, 2023. The band formed back in 2012, so here they are with their first single 11 years later. Peaked at number 43 on the Oricon single chart. I feel like a lot of the anime opening quizzes and whatnot and lists kind of favor the first open, but honestly, I think the second one's the better song, and you'll be able to hear it here.
When you say that it took 11 years to release a single, that would have sounded weird had we not done the music podcast, but I feel like we run into weird stuff like that all the time, so not as weird as it sounds. Yeah, it almost just sounds like a more like just a regular song as opposed to an anime theme, which is probably why you might favor it a little more than the original open.
It has a bit of that kind of like 80s pop sensibility to it, I think, too, which draws me to it. But yeah, it feels more serious than the show ever is, certainly at that point.
Yeah, for sure. And let me unpause the podcast version of that. Again, really good stuff there. Definitely want to check really all the music from Horimiya out. I think it's all really good. And, this is just another theme that's really good in that show. We're going to get to my picks, the first 3 picks now. And this week, it's something I've talked about doing, and I finally jumped in and did it. I went with all cover songs for this edition. And, there are so many anime cover songs out there, as it turns out. But for the most part, I wanted to stick to established artists or bands that covered them, as opposed to maybe like VTuber units or like Bang Dream, or even like, it's just random people covering.
There's no Poppin' Party on here?
No Poppin' Party. We could do a whole episode on Poppin' Party covering songs. They've done some really good ones too. But today we're kind of sticking to main groups, and I wanted to pick a couple of interesting ones first. And we'll start out with the number 1 pick. The original song was the opening theme to the 2007 anime Lucky Star. It is Moteke Sailor Fuku by Jam Project. You and I heard this song for the first time together at Ohayocon in 2008 when Jam Project came in, and we got Lucky Star t-shirt replicas that had the dress on the t-shirt.
Yeah.
And they played their cover version of this song, which is it the greatest cover of all time? Not really. It's a song that is really best used as an open, but there's also something classic about Jam Project taking it on. That's like, you know what? Well, let's listen to this. The original debuted at number 2 on the Oricon chart, certified gold. It's probably one of the classic opening themes of the era. The Jam Project version appears on the Lucky Star Remix 002 release, which came out on December 2nd, 2007. It reached number 5 on the Oricon chart. So Jam Project clearly being involved in a song that was really popular with the otaku culture kind of threw this one up into the rankings. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting song, and Jam Project's take on it is definitely an interesting take on it. Masaki Endo specifically has a bunch of anime cover songs, and some of them are really amazing, and we'll probably get to those in the coming months. But like I said, worth picking just because of, one, this kind of reminds me of that first Otakon we went to, and then 2, it's weird to hear Jam Project covering that song that doesn't seem like a song that Jam Project would cover.
Yeah, it kind of feels like if the girls from Lucky Star had a spin-off series where they piloted giant robots, that would be the opening theme to it, and it would be amazing. I also had to point out that the YouTube channel that you found that on is Rooster Cogburn PhD. What's up with that?
I don't know. It was the one that had 27 million views or 47, whatever it was. It was like the actual, there was like a topic channel that had like a few views.
Yeah.
And then there was this one that had like an insane amount of views. I don't know. It's very...
It's a great name.
It is. Very, very weird. But
yeah, Jam Project's awesome. That actually rocked.
Yeah, it's good stuff from Jam Project, their cover of the Lucky Star Open. Let's get to number 2 on the list, and this is the lone English version of a cover. This is the cover of the 6th ending theme to Rurouni Kenshin. This is 1/3 Pure Hearted Emotions, 1/3 No Junjo Not Kanjo. This cover is done by Janie Lane. This was released, first let's talk about the original song, 6th Ending Theme to Kenshin, released on November 27, 1997. Reached number 3 on the Oricon chart, sold more than 800,000 copies as of like 2016, I think was when that number was noted on Wikipedia. On October 27, 2010, a tribute album was released. It was put together by Marty Fredrickson, former producer for Aerosmith and Ozzy Osbourne. It's a great tribute album. Mostly songs in English. They do have a couple of straight covers on the release. And Janie Lane was brought in to do the English cover of this song. Obviously best known as the front man and driving force behind Warrant. Unfortunately, this was one of his last big projects as he passed away on October the 11th, 2011. But, for English covers of Japanese songs, I feel like they did a pretty good job with this album. Siam Shade is amazing, so everybody should check out Siam Shade, but also check this cover CD out. Yeah, as far as English covers go, it's really good, and there are just some huge names that ended up working on this tribute album, and it's wild that they were able to pull them all together for a band like Siam Shade, but somehow they really nailed the whole thing.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've heard that album, but so many really good covers on it. And obviously Janie Lane is like probably one of the saddest kind of the industry just ruining somebody stories that you had out of that era. Totally underrated songwriter and singer. Anyone should check out Warrant's discography. If you know them from Cherry Pie, you're doing yourself a disservice because even on that album alone, there are so many better songs. They had played Mr. Rainmaker on satellite radio the other day, and I can't remember, it was like Tommy London or whoever the DJ was.
Yeah.
He was kind of talking about how like that wasn't a single, but probably should have been. It was just, that album's great, and it's a shame that kind of what happened to him, both, from the industry and just his experiences as being the lead singer of a glam band. It's kind of cool that just a while back, like a few months ago, I started getting in my YouTube recommendations videos from Cosma Endo from Siam Shade, one of the guitarists. And it does kind of seem like maybe they're going to start doing things again, which would be fantastic. They are certainly on the growing list of Japanese bands I would love to see live.
Oh, for 100%. Their stuff is amazing. And they got back together briefly in the 2010s for benefit concerts for the Tohoku earthquake. And people kind of thought at that time, like maybe this was them kind of getting it going again. Then they didn't. But like you said, maybe it's ramping up again. Would be great news to get some new Siam Shade, or even just them touring on their hits, because I would go see that 100%.
Yeah, for sure.
One more song from me before we flip it back over to Mike, and we're going to go with another Rurouni Kenshin song. This is a cover of the first opening theme to Rurouni Kenshin. The song is Sobakasu, and this is a cover by Mikuni Shimokawa. It was the original song released by Judy and Mary on February 19th, 1996. It reached number 1 on the Oricon chart. It was the band's only number 1 single and the only song that reached 1 million in sales before the band broke up. Mikuni Shimokawa, certainly an outstanding Anna-song singer in her own right, released a cover CD, her first cover CD in 2007 called Reprise. Shimokawa and Mikuni Best Anime Songs. Obviously, probably best known for her themes for Full Metal Panic. Really just an amazing singer. And her covers are great. There's another one that I didn't even realize Or no, I take that back. That's there was one song I found from Masami Okui that the next time we do this, we'll have to add in. But Shimokawa's got a lot of great covers. This is a 2 CD collection. The first disc has her hits, and the second disc has covers. It's really good. You should definitely check it out. Yeah, if you're a fan of anime covers and a fan of her music, I definitely recommend checking that album or the 2 CD set out. But it's funny, we were just talking about somebody ranking this song lower on their list because, like you said, at the time, Judy and Mary's vocal range can be a little on the high side. This cover does feel like it's a little bit more kind of in the reasonable range and maybe not as grating to some people.
Yeah, that's kind of an ambitious song to want to cover because of that. But I do think, as far as what I want from a first opening for just a standard shonen anime, I think it does what it needs to do. Like it doesn't need to be as heavy as stuff later on in the series. It's happy. It introduces the characters. I really like it.
Yeah, it's a great theme, and it does fit the tenor of the show at the time, and I think that what works really well. And
yeah, I did want to mention, too, that kind of going back to the Siam Shade thing real quick, is that they are going to be holding a joint live event with the band Sophia commemorating their 30th anniversary. They're going to be playing live at Osaka Castle Hall on February 9th, so
there we go.
Who knows what comes after that?
Yeah, that's really good news, but definitely worth keeping an eye on what Siam Shade is up to, but so that's my first 3 covers. Let's jump back to Mike for his last 2 songs of the week. What do you got for us for number 2?
Yeah, so moving on, I definitely wanted to get back into the Gundam music because it's so good and there's so much of it. I haven't completely wrung Gundam 00 dry yet. I still have some songs to hit from it, and with that being said, my next to last pick for the week is the second opening theme to the second season of Gundam 00, the 4th opening overall. It is Namida no Muko from Stereo Pony.
Yeah, the Gundam 00 music also amazing, and Stereo Pony's great, and this is kind of a perfect choice for a Gundam song, and they really nailed it.
Yeah, it's interesting when you get to like the end of a Gundam series. This isn't necessarily the heaviest song, but it still feels perfect for the last open. It's the second single from Stereo Pony. It was released on February 9th, 2009. Peaked at number 2 in the Oricon single chart and was the 95th best-selling single of the year. I don't know at what point that's no longer like a huge thing to commemorate, but I assume it must have sold pretty well since it did peak at number 2.
I think they keep track of the top 100 of the year, so that would be why it's worth a mention for sure.
They disbanded in 2012, sadly, due to some health issues that Aimee, the lead singer, was dealing with. She apparently got over them because she did move on to form the band Allison Underground and has been rocking a solo career since 2016. So she's still out there doing it. But man, Stereo Pony, between this and the song they did for Darker Than Black, just really good stuff. And I could listen to this anytime.
Yeah, good stuff from them. There's just, especially in this era of Gundam shows, there was a formula for how to make a Gundam theme, and it feels like so many acts got it right, and just it works so well with the animation and everything that's going on, and kind of a shame that the group itself didn't continue on longer, but like you mentioned, Aimee has gone on to do a lot of really good stuff as a solo artist, so at least she's still out there making great music, but that's a classic opening theme for sure.
Yeah, can't stay away from Gundam forever. It's too good, and for years since really, if you want to give the Mobile Suit Gundam Open a pass for being from 1979,
for sure,
they've been doing good music throughout.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So definitely check that out. Check out all the music from Gundam 00. It's definitely worth checking out. One more song from a show that also has amazing music. It's going to be your final pick for this week. What do you got?
Yeah, it's funny. As much as I feel like this show gets maligned, it has music to me that elicits that same kind of emotional reaction as, say, like the music from Inuyasha. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it has to do with when I watched it or if it has to do with kind of their ability in between Akira Toriyama and the other creative people behind the franchise, their way to kind of introduce the characters or show the characters in a way that just brings back memories of prior times you saw them. It's something I can't fully explain, but anytime I see a song from this show, I just you kind of get this warm feeling like, hey, here they are, they're back. That being said, this is the fourth ending theme to Dragon Ball GT. The song is Sabitsuita Machine Gun Day Imao Uchinuko from Wands.
It's a mouthful for sure, but it's a great theme song.
Unnecessarily long title. It could have just been the first three words, and I would have been fine with that. This was released on September 3rd, 1997. It was the 12th single for the band. It peaked at number 4 on the Oricon single chart. Band formed back in 1991, disbanded in 2000, and then came back in 2019 with a new vocalist. Since reforming, they've provided like 5 theme songs for Detective Conan, so clearly there was an appetite for these guys to get back together, and they hit the ground running.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was pretty sure they had gotten into the Conan universe because I see their name show up quite often as far as Conan's themes, and
yeah, since this 2019, 2020, they've been all over the place with Conan.
One thing I will say about watching the video of this is not everything needs to be upscaled to 4K 60. Like, it really looks washed out.
Yeah.
Like, they clearly, like, really polished it up to the point where it's almost blurry because it's a little too mushed out.
But it seems fitting when you consider all the issues that Dragon Ball Z has had with subsequent like remasters and reissues where no matter what they do, people aren't happy with it. It's just like, leave it alone. Just give me the normal aspect ratio. Don't clean the video up. I want to see it like they saw it in the late 80s, early 90s or whatever.
Yeah, and I don't know that this was their cleanup or if this was the YouTube channel's cleanup. Because that happens a lot, and they run it through an AI filter or something and try to clean it up. Didn't bother with the music, though, because clearly that was like mono track, stereoed out, but still a great song, still one you need to check out. Like I said, all the music from GT is amazing. Just wish the show had been as amazing as the music. If it had been, maybe it would have run for a lot longer.
It's wild, but like, and I've noticed this now. I'm a few episodes into Daima. Like, it doesn't even necessarily have to be great. I think sometimes just being there with Goku and the gang, just you feel good.
Yeah, for sure. That's really all you need to shoot for. Necessarily, don't do too much, but good stuff for sure. Definitely worth checking out. My last 2 cover songs would be remiss if I didn't get a cover by Masami Okui. She's got a couple of cover CDs. That was the one that popped into my head. She had a later cover CD, which I don't own, but I will eventually. There's a great cover song on that. I'm trying to remember what it was, but it kind of, I was surprised. I think it was one of the City Hunter songs that she covered, and I was not expecting that. But this is a cover of one of my all-time favorite anime themes, and fitting because these two people have worked together so much. This is, the song is Northern Lights. It is the second opening theme for Shaman King, originally performed by Megumi Hayashibara. The original song peaked at number 3 on the Oricon chart, released March 27, 2002. That was the highest peak of all of the Megumi Hayashibara songs on the Oricon chart. B-side was Omokage, which was the second ending of Shaman King. Okui released this album, which is Masami Kobushi, Kobushi being the old Japanese shorthand for cover CD. Kobushi. Of course. May 1st, 2003. Reached number 17 on the Oricon chart. It includes 3 Megumi Hayashibara songs, including Northern Lights, Give a Reason, and Successful Mission. It also includes covers of Cutie Honey, Truth from Revolutionary Girl Utena, Cruel Angel's Thesis, and a really good cover of You Get the Burning from Nadesco. But we're going to start out with Northern Lights. Like I said, it's one of my all-time favorites. And when you hear her cover it, because her voice and Megumi Hayashibara's voice are almost synonymous of this era, you would think that she could have originally done the song, wouldn't have thought any different of it. Yeah, I mean, you listen to it and think she could have originally done that song and I wouldn't have known any different. And not surprising to see her cover so many Megumi songs because, like I said, they're just so synonymous with that era. And, of course, both working for King Records makes that a really easy thing to do.
Yeah, you got to wonder, like, if you're a songwriter within King Records in that era, are you just writing songs thinking, like, well, either one of them could do this. I hope one of them does. It doesn't matter which. It's going to be a hit either way, and it's going to sound amazing.
Yeah, for sure. And there was the one, like, a couple weeks ago where, like, one of them sang it, and then the other one did the demo version of it. So it was just like, clearly, you know, that was the winning formula at the time. You wanted to be one of the people writing their songs because you were going to make a bunch of money.
Shame Shaman King wasn't a bigger success over here.
For sure. The music from that show is amazing as well. And yeah, the show didn't necessarily pan out, but definitely pick up that cover CD. A lot of great stuff on there. And there are other cover CDs one will delve into in future episodes. Going to wrap things up with something current, because this is an album that was just released a couple of weeks ago. We've spent a lot of time talking about Kesoku Band, the fictional band from Bocchi the Rock. They have released a CD that includes 5 cover songs. The song we're going to play today is Shiny Days, which is the first opening theme to the show Laid Back Camp, released by Asaka on January the 24th, 2018. Song reached number 32 on the Oricon chart and number 15 on the Billboard Japan Hot 100. This cover was part of a mini cover CD released by Kesoku Band called Kirara Tribute Collection. It was released on Christmas 2024. Includes cover songs from K-On! Is the Order a Rabbit, Kill Me Baby, and Sakura Trick, along with the Laid Back Camp song. Laid Back Camp, Saka does great work. The Laid Back Camp song is a perfect fit for a laid back show. And this cover of it, which is done by the character Nichika Iichi, is really well done. Just an upbeat, jaunty song to a kind of an upbeat show. I was really curious when I heard this cover, like how the voice actress was going to handle a lot of the English in the song. As we've mentioned before, Asaka, bilingual, spending a lot of her formative youth in the United States. So there's a lot of English, and it's very, very much more fluent in the original. But Suzushiro did a pretty good job of kind of getting through the English without it sounding too Japanese. But just, like I said, just a fun song to end on. And the Kesoku Band just continues to release music that I think gets people more excited about a potential sequel series, which everybody kind of hopes is coming down the pipeline sometime in the next year. But good stuff from them for sure. It's just... There's just so much cover music out there, and it's kind of fun to get a chance to kind of take a look at all of it on the podcast. It's wild to see who's all out there covering music, and it just shows how big the anime music industry is.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, and kind of going back to the Kesoku Band, and just how many shows there are that are about music, just in general.
Yeah.
You
just watch girls band cry.
Yeah, and the music in that was really good. I think it's probably like anything else. It's like your random isekai or person with this class that's terrible becomes an aristocrat. Like it's you have the same framework. How do you tweak a couple of the things to make it a little different? And it's definitely worth watching. I just wonder, like, how does that work? You feel like rock music is definitely more mainstream and more promoted in Japan, but is that the reason that there are more anime about music, or does it work in reverse? And the fact that there are so many anime and media about music keeps rock relevant? I don't know how that plays out.
I mean, it seems to be almost one feeding the other, almost in this endless loop, because you have clearly rock and roll is very popular, even amongst the youth of Japan. Then you have shows like this, and then you hear stories about you can go buy Bocchi's guitar, and you watch YouTube videos on it. Like
every so often, there's the new Hatsune Miku signature guitar.
Yeah.
Like, she's not a real person. She doesn't play a guitar.
That's exactly right. I mean, and obviously these are characters in an anime that don't really play their music either, but it's like, people are out there, I got to go buy the guitar. I got to go play. I've got to be the next rock star.
Every music-related anime I've watched has been so precise about specific instruments. It's not just enough that they play a guitar. It's the fact that this character plays a Les Paul.
Yes.
It's this person plays a Telecaster. Mm. It's very much... You feel like it's written by someone who really loves rock music, because that's the kind of stuff you think about when you're really into rock music.
Yeah, I mean, there's a great video online, and I think probably worth sharing at some point with one of the guys who's involved with the music with Bocchi the Rock, and there's one song that they play, and there's a moment where one of Bocchi's strings break and she has to improvise. Well, he, like, in the video, like, cuts one of the strings and improvises in the same way that she does. And it's just like, like, things like that are clearly thought out by people who have been in that situation where a string is broken. Like, what are you going to do? Like, how would you deal with that? And It does. It feels very authentic. It doesn't feel like you're just taking advantage of fans of music. Like, clearly these people love music. And the people in the industry, the people in the show seem to love music. That's the other thing, too, is it could come off as fake if your voice actresses are not really music people. But it's like you see, there's a whole series of videos with Yoshino Aoyama, the voice actress for Bocchi, learning how to play the guitar and learning how to, go through step by step. And that probably also fueled guitar sales. We're like, oh, if she's learning, I'm going to learn too. So it's amazing to me. And I wish it was something that was replicated over here, because I think it would do wonders for the music industry in the United States.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of just started thinking randomly, and a show that really, even though it had kind of classic music, wasn't necessarily a show about music. Fully Cooley,
yeah,
like the Rickenbacker that the main character had in that. I was trying to see if there was a version of that was released for sale.
I'd be shocked if there wasn't.
Yeah, same here. I have to do some more research on that, but that's just one of those like kind of the early examples of they drew the specific brand of instrument for this anime.
I know it was big with K-On! Like, I know Mugi, the keyboardist, played a Korg, and that was a big deal. Like, that she had that particular model, and I think they even spent a whole episode, and I think Bocchi did too, in a music store where they're like literally talking about these things, and it's amazing that some of that's even interesting to Japanese fans, and clearly they ate it up.
And I think it plays so well to the Western guitar player or musician or music fan, because there's so many videos on YouTube of people touring music stores in Japan, just because there are so many different varieties of guitars, and also kind of your main brands even have like their spin-off brands that sell guitars in Japan that they can't sell in the States because they rip off their competition essentially.
Yeah.
It's wild what you can find out there, and the options are just endless compared to maybe what we see here in our kind of slowly dying music stores.
Well, and that's part of the reason. Obviously, we do love the music that comes from anime, and that's why we do these episodes. But also, it is kind of to spotlight what is going on in Japan, and to show the music industry in general is not only alive and well, but growing somehow. And you see kids that you just wouldn't think would even be into, the most they would be into music is maybe doing karaoke, and they're playing guitars, they're playing keyboards, they're full-fledged musical geniuses at a young age, and it's fun to see, because I'm all about anybody getting involved in music, however you want to do it, and it's just really cool, for sure.
For sure.
But that's why we do this, and we love the music from Japan. But it is time to bring this episode to a close for a Wednesday morning. Great to have you along with us for our Anime Wednesdays. We'll be here every Wednesday morning, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And we'll be back again next week with another episode of Anime Wednesdays. Don't forget, Nerdcast News will be coming your way on Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Saturday, a watch-along of the Royal Rumble, 6 o'clock Eastern Time in the evening. And then on Sunday, another episode of Music Weekly, the music of January the 17th, coming your way. Big thanks to Stoveleg Media for their continued support. A big thanks to Rachel for dropping by, and the one post that I had to delete. Thank you for dropping by as well and dropping spam in our chat. Big thanks to everybody for checking us out wherever you do that for this podcast. That's going to wrap things up. For Mike and the entire crew, I'm Matt saying so long. Don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.